Hello and welcome to the Ending Body Burnout Show. We are your hosts, Chris and Philly, co-founders of a multi-award-winning functional medicine practice, serving busy people with energy, mood and gut issues.
While busyness, addictive doing, people-pleasing and perfectionism might be the norm, it's not normal, and it's a major contributor to health issues.
Our goal with this show is to give you a holistic root cause approach to healing your body so that you don't have to continue doctor or diet hopping or popping a gazillion supplements hoping something might stick.
So get ready to heal your body, get your spark back, deeply connect with yourself and step into the life of your dreams.
Let's dive in.
Welcome to the potty today. It's Philly here. I am so excited for this episode today. I think I always say that. We have such amazing, intelligent people on our podcast. But before we dive into the episode, I just wanted to do a quick announcement that we are coming to Brisbane on the 16th of April, which is a Tuesday, and we are holding our next book tour book party at 6 o'clock to 7:30 p.m. at Scrumptious Reads in Red Hill, and Chris and I are super excited. I'm bringing Chris along to this one as well. If you would like to attend, go to the show notes and click on book tour. And you can book your seat. It is free. There is going to be lots of in-depth conversation around how to end your body burnout. We're going to have a Q&A. We're going to take you through a brain retraining exercise. There's going to be a special guest attending, and we'll have food and drinks, all healthy, of course, and it's going to be so much fun, and I would love to see you there. I'd love to give you a hug in real life. So, yep, that is in a couple of weeks. Now, on to today's episode. So we have the amazing Bronwyn Kidd, who is a Tasmanian-based mould testing technician and building biologist. And she is super passionate about helping you create a healthy home. So we're going to dive into all things mould, specifically how it applies to our homes and buildings. So in our practice, we actually do work with a lot of clients who end up having a mold issue. Not everyone does, but mold can definitely be part of a contributing factor to your body burnout symptoms. So energy, mood, gut issues, it can definitely be a hidden root cause. And, so I'm very proficient in testing the body for mold and testing other body systems to help clear mold from the body and help you to become more resilient so you tolerate mold better. But what I don't know a lot about is building biology. So I really wanted Bronwyn to come on the show to give our listeners a more complete picture into how to address mold if you're struggling with mold illness, or if you're, worrying about or maybe wondering if your home is moldy and if it's affecting your health. So Chris and I have had our own fair share of moldy homes, which we chat to Bronwyn about in the episode, and it no doubt contributed to my own past body burnout and chronic health issues. It wasn't the thing or the only thing, but it definitely impacted the health of my body. And we see hidden mold, as I mentioned before, in so many other clients as well. In fact, that's how I first connected with Bronwyn. So we have a mutual client. I was working with this woman and also her son who were experiencing mold-related health issues. And over the time of spending time with them, I'm like, you really need to address this mold in your house. You're not improving the way that I would expect you to improve. And so over time, she reached out to Bronwyn to test and remove the mold from her home. Now, there's some really cool and interesting stats. So, did you know that 24% of the population have a gene mutation that makes them susceptible to mold illness, and that a third of homes have mold issues? So, if you're listening, it's highly likely that you might have a mold issue either inside your body or in your home, or maybe one of your family members do. So listen up to all the insights, mythbusters, and practical tips that Bronwyn brings to you today. I'm so excited. And a bit more about Bronwyn. So Bronwyn Kidd is your go-to for all things healthy homes. She has a focus on helping people tackle mold-related illnesses. Bronwyn is on a mission to make your living space safer and healthier. She helps you to navigate the complexities of water-damaged buildings. Her knack for understanding the ins and outs of mold and water damage issues will put your mind at ease as she guides you through the process. Bronwyn's journey into healthy living isn't just professional, it's also personal. With a solid background in health sciences, her own health challenges, and a passion for sustainable living, she brings a warm, personal touch to everything that she does, and I definitely know you'll be able to feel that during our conversation today. So she provides detailed, easy to understand reports tailored to homeowners and renters, empowering them with trusted guidance to create healthier indoor environments and to provide independent, evidence-based reports to third parties such as insurance companies and real estate professionals. Bronwyn's approach is all about making health-focused choices for your home easy and enjoyable. So let's dive in and pick her brains.
Okay, so welcome everybody to this episode of the Ending Body Burnout Show. We're super excited to have our guest Bronwyn on the show today. Bronwyn, thanks so much for joining us. Super excited to have you.
So great to be here.
Thanks for coming on. Philly, let's dive in.
Yeah, I'm so excited to talk to you. We actually have a mutual client who was like, yeah, you need to talk to Bronwyn. She's amazing. She looked at my house for mold, and this lady was experiencing a lot of mold illness as well as her children. And so I'm like, oh, she's in Tasmania. She's so cool. So anyway, we're really excited to have you on our podcast today. So let's dive into why you're so obsessed around mold and healthy homes.
That is a good question. Yeah. So it's been a long time coming. I've been quite interested in healthy homes for a while, which, it stemmed from a few places, but primarily it stemmed from my previous business and the mission I had with that, which was around replacing single-use plastics in homes. And there's the sustainability side of that, getting rid of plastic for the earth, but then there's also the health side of it and how going plastic free or low waste, encourages you to eat more whole foods, and prevents you from eating food that's been in contact with some of those plastics. So it's sort of stemmed from that mission with Sistomi, the business. And a few years ago, I found out about building biology, and I sort of had it in the back of my mind, like, oh, that would be really cool to do. And then sort of around 2021, I experienced a few health challenges myself. And, I'm still I don't have much clarity around it at this point as to what exactly it was. You guys will probably be able to dig in a little bit deeper. It was highly likely a bit of burnout. And, investigating that, and what was happening at the time, I realized I just needed a break. And then I decided to really pull back on the business and had a bit of a rest for a while, and kind of reassessed what I was doing and decided it was time for a change. So then I entered the world of building biology and I'm loving it. And a huge part of building biology and the work that we do is in mold. So as building biologists, we specialize in looking for things in the environment that can affect our health. So mainly in the built environment. So things like our homes, our offices, and the buildings that we spend time in, and how, whether it be mold or toxins, chemicals or other critters like dust mites and all sorts of things, and how that affects our health. So mold is the biggest part of that. And, actually looking back, now I've started studying building biology. I do have some history with mold, which has highly likely contributed to my, fatigue and the health issues I was experiencing around 2021.
Yeah. I remember we live in a new house now, but we were living in a house that was built in the 1800s. Beautiful house.
Wow.
There was just like renovations to renovations over the years. One day I was walking to the toilet in the bathroom and the floor just sunk underneath my feet.
Oh, wow.
And we kind of suspected that there were issues because it smelt funny. Like that mold has that very interesting smell. But yeah, the whole floor in the bathroom just collapsed. And oh my gosh, it was so gross when we had a builder
Wow.
actually come in to totally renovate the whole bathroom. It was just like mold everywhere. So
Oh, no.
everywhere.
So, yeah, was it some serious water damage that you found?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not really sure. I don't think they knew. Oh, they were just really old pipes, really old pipes.
And like not very well laid either.
Yeah. And then I think back to my history too. When I first moved out of home, lived in a flat in Hobart, and the bathroom, we would clean the walls and literally, and we'll talk about that a bit later because I would like to get your advice around
Yes,
this.
we can dig into
But
cleaning.
literally within a week, the black mold would be like all over the walls and the roof again. And then later on, when we got married and lived in Sydney, we had 3 floods or 4 floods where there was probably mold everywhere. So it's,
Wow. So I think at this point, it's important that we identify that mold will grow when there's a moisture issue. So you mentioned water damage and floods. And one thing I wish more people would understand, that if you have a mold problem, it means you have a water problem.
mm-hmm.
So, it could be
Makes
the
sense.
flood that has been in the house, many years ago and not dried properly, not dried within a short enough time frame, or it could be the roof leak or the leaking pipes in your old home, for example, that just, leak for a long time and on even a small drip, and that can lead to pretty serious issues, because when we have that higher levels of moisture in the building materials, or in the soil surrounding the home, or in our contents as well, that's when we see the mold growth.
Yeah. What about the unit in Hobart at uni? I kind of think about like if there's mold just growing all over the walls and you clean it and it comes straight back, is that usually a water issue inside the walls or is it probably poor ventilation?
Look, it can be. Mold is a complex topic, really, because every house is different. Everybody uses their homes in a different way. So everyone is putting moisture into the atmosphere in their home, um, to a different level every day. It's structured differently. Bathrooms have different ventilation. People have different length showers. There's so many factors that can come into this. So, yeah, it can, in bathrooms, you've obviously got the high level of moisture going into there from showering. And if there's not enough ventilation going out, so the exhaust fan is not strong enough, or if you're not using it, which is quite common, especially with teenagers, they don't like using the fan. Those factors can mean that the moisture will sit on the wall for a long enough time that you're going to get mold growing. So,
Mm.
you know, sounds like you've cleaned it off at that time, which there's good ways and bad ways of cleaning it. Maybe we can get into that later. But if you're not addressing the moisture issue, that is just going to keep coming back.
Yeah.
So I see a lot of people, and I have a lot of people call me, who have situations like that, and they think it's okay to just go and get someone in to clean it. They might get one of the remediation companies to come in and fog, which is essentially putting a chemical on it, which kind of pauses growth for a little while.
Mm.
And then they don't address the moisture issue, and then it comes back, and then they start getting sick, which is
Yeah.
not what we want.
Yep. To be honest, I was only 18 We probably only cleaned it maybe like twice a year. And then it's like, oh, it's back again. Oh,
That's all
and we
right. Did you
probably
have any, did anyone in the home have any health issues during that time?
look, that's probably where I started developing things like anxiety, although that was a combination of lots of stuff. But yeah, PCOS, infertility that I later found out. Yeah, like I had definitely health issues starting.
Yeah, interesting, interesting.
So
Um,
around that, why? Let's just dig into I'm sure that our listeners and a lot of people have heard about mold and that it can be bad, but why is it so toxic? And are there people who are more susceptible to it than others in terms of developing health issues?
there definitely are people who are more susceptible to developing health issues from mold. So there's been some research that has found people with a certain gene type have more susceptibility to mold. Yeah, I'm not an expert in this side of things, but it has to do with how the body detoxes mycotoxins, and these people with the HLA gene mutation, have it build up in their bodies, and the ramifications happen. So there's that group of people, which ends up being about a quarter of the population, which is quite astounding when you think about it. And that
Mm-hmm.
fact that there's at least a third of homes in Australia that have been found to have toxic levels of mold in them. You can see why there's a lot of people getting quite ill from this. So there's the genetic side of things. There's different lifestyle factors that may affect our ability to detox it. And then some people will also get more acute symptoms with, people with a different genetic type may get acute symptoms like the colds, some short-term sinus issues, maybe a bit of asthma, and other allergies. But then we get symptoms right through to the more chronic issues like the chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, sometimes CIRS, chronic inflammatory response syndrome, which there's a lot of research around the link between that and mold, and particularly water damaged buildings, because it's also important to think about how mold, as I said before, is a result of water damage and moisture, but also with water damage and moisture, we may see bacteria growing and other microbes, which could potentially contribute to health issues. So it may
Mm.
not just be mold in a lot of circumstances.
Yeah. Those stats you mentioned. So a quarter of people have the genetic mutation, and did you say a third of homes? That's huge. When I found out about those stats, because I probably wasn't earlier on as a practitioner asking enough questions around mold until I'm like, what? A quarter of people have this gene, and a third of homes have toxic mold. We must look at this. Like any person who has any sign of body burnout, like energy, mood, gut issues, inflammatory issues, there may be a mold contributing to that at a root cause for sure. And I find
Yeah,
too,
absolutely.
like a lot of our clients and listeners who are running like those busy, overdoing, high achieving patterns, and puts their system into a fight flight response as well, where they become more susceptible to toxins in the environment, where their body's always like, danger, where is the danger? I'm like always feeling fight flighty. And so that's where people can start developing, or even if they have this gene mutation, it starts to actually express because their system is looking for danger, and mold can be considered dangerous to the body.
Absolutely. And I do see people with a lot of neurological related symptoms. So that's the headaches, the fatigue, the brain fog, the memory loss. And I've also seen clients who have, become delirious because of their mold exposure. It's quite scary for some people, living with the memory loss, not being able to remember what they did half an hour ago, and not being able to escape either, not being able to escape that. Their home and location, because it's quite complicated when you get into housing and that side of things. So yeah, it's a big issue that needs to be addressed. And 1/3 of the homes is probably the baseline statistic. I've also seen research. There was one research paper conducted a few years ago by UTAS here at the University in Tasmania, and they found that 40% of new builds, so new buildings, have mold in them. And that's absurd. So the issue also stems into our home design and the construction code, and things that are happening when our buildings are being built, before the occupants even get in there. They're designed to fail.
Why? Why is this such an issue? Where's this coming from?
That's a big question. So with the new builds, the way that we are designing and building houses is often not fit for the different climate zones that we have. So for example, in Tasmania, we have so many different climate zones. We've got alpine regions, we've got drier regions like down in the Midlands, we've got wetter regions on the West Coast. And I see a lot of buildings that are not designed for the location. So, housing affordability is an issue, which I believe is one of the reasons that we're having these issues, because we're pumping out these buildings that are cheaper, so it's more affordable. We're cutting costs and cutting corners on the design, and then not being built for the location and the climate. So we're seeing buildings that are built with high energy efficiency. So buildings that are designed to hold on to the air and have lower turnovers of the air inside. And so we're seeing water vapor that is produced from things like cooking and bathing and even breathing. It's important to remember we also reduce water vapor when we breathe. And in order to keep the heat inside or the cool inside, we're also trapping in all the water vapor. And when our buildings can't breathe, that water vapor will essentially condensate on the walls quite often, or other building materials, and then it gets stuck there, and that's when we get mold growing.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. How do you test for mold too, by the way?
So we test for mold with a few different strategies. The main way we do it is with air samples. So I've got a device that captures mold spores, and then we send that off to the lab and it gets tested. So there's air samples and there's also surface samples. But before we get to the sampling, as mold testing technicians and building biologists, we do a really thorough visual inspection first, and then learning about the occupant behaviour, because the issue and how to fix it stems from those factors, and the testing is a small part of it. Which it gives us a lot of data on how to move forward with it, but we need to look at the whole building and how the occupants are using the space holistically.
That's super interesting. What sort of behaviors do occupants have that can contribute to mold growth?
So many things. So yeah, I guess I'll go off what I was saying before about the type buildings. So first of all, we've got the airtight buildings, and the biggest thing I'm seeing with those is people are simply not opening their windows. They think we need to have them closed all the time to keep all the heat in, because you're just wasting the power bill if you don't open the windows. But opening the windows every day for 5 to 60 minutes is really important to get fresh air coming in, to get the water vapor out, get the other noxious gases out. For example, people with gas stoves are putting noxious gases into their breathing space, and we need to ventilate that out. So ventilation is a huge part of the mold issue. And
can I just jump in just to reinforce what you said? Because I'm thinking about, it's so cold in wintertime. And do you really want all your windows open? You only need to have your window open 5 minutes a day in your rooms.
At a minimum, yeah, somewhere between 5 and 60.
That's
Depending
achievable.
on the home and the occupants. Yeah, that's it. So I think in Tasmania, we're all used to wearing puffer jackets. We can put on a jacket for half an hour or so to ventilate the space and have that fresh air coming in.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, so some of the other things I see people doing, keeping on ventilation, is them not using the exhaust fans properly. So, not using the exhaust fan while cooking or having a shower. That is a massive source of moisture. Things like having dryers inside. Philly's pointing the finger there at
I
someone.
do use the
Times. Okay, it's pretty rare, but sometimes I'm like, why have you not got a fan on? You've been in the shower for 40 minutes.
40 minutes. Shout what?
Must be very
accused.
clean.
I feel like
Yeah, now you've been told by Bronwyn that putting the exhaust fan on is one of the best things you can do to keep mold in the bathroom.
maybe twice a year.
I feel like you might have latched onto one time and then that might have been an accident.
Maybe.
Very good. So, and one other thing is clothes dryers. I see people who have clothes dryers just vent into the laundry. And you can imagine, like, a load of washing can hold somewhere between 4 to 8 liters of water. So if you're putting your clothes in the dryer, that's 8 liters of water vapor going into that space. So ventilating laundries, making sure you've got an appropriate dryer for your space is very important. And there are ways to fix that as well. And we've also got things like, yeah, there's a lot of factors that come into it, and it really comes down to the building and the family who's living there themselves. So, but those are the main ones.
So good.
That's really interesting. One more follow-up question. So our brother-in-law is an architect, and I know he talks about humanizing spaces and really getting an indication of where the property is and how it's laid out, and so now I've heard from you, and then I've heard from my brother-in-law Jaron about these things. I get it now. That makes so much sense to me on why some, but also why some people try and skimp on cost, building affordability. I can understand, like, with the affordability of houses, why people would see cost of consultation and planning and this like that they might not see the value. That'll happen later on down the track. I don't have to worry about that. But you're saying, what was it? 40% of new builds have a mold issue coming in.
That's right.
Huge.
Yeah. Well, I kind of think about it's sort of like the food industry too. So you could buy a $2 loaf of white crappy bread, or you could buy a $15 loaf of primal alternative, grain-free, all good nutrient bread. And so sometimes, yeah, people don't see the value in that. It's just like, oh, this is cheap. Cool. I'll just do that. If I get issues down the track, I'll deal with it then. When it's like, well, it could be even more expensive when we get to that point.
What's it cost you to not consider this,
That's right. And yeah, I think people understand the cost, what these issues can lead to. So, we may cut costs now, but also just going for more energy efficient buildings when arguably they're not helping the mold situation. If we don't address the mold issue early, it can be, a 5-figure bill. I've even seen bills in the 6 figures, in extreme cases, 7 figures to fix water damage and mold issues. So yeah, it's the water vapor internally, but it's also how the building is designed on the outside. So I'm seeing a lot of buildings with flat roofs that are leaking.
Wow.
And that is a huge issue to fix, because you can imagine a flat roof, it's the guttering system, and to make a pitched roof on top to get rid of the situation, that is very expensive. And being a roof, the water infiltrates through the entire building in some situations. So yeah, there are a few design issues as well. So Yeah, but a quarter of homes is extreme, and I wish more people would address this before designing a home, and I wish more people would consult a building biologist or an architect or building designer who is aware of water damage issues down the line, especially as we experience more extreme weather patterns as well. I only see this becoming an increasingly, serious issue.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So good. I'm learning so much. So when we have new clients, I'll do a initial consult first where I'm getting a thorough case history. And one of the questions that we have in our assessments is, do you have mold in the home? A lot of people are like, no, or, oh, yeah, sometimes I'll have some on the windowsill, but I just wipe that away. So it's not always visible to like the occupant, is it? Where are some mold places, like common places mold grows that's actually quite hidden?
That is a good question. And first of all, I love that you ask a question about mold in the homes. Do you mind if I make a recommendation for your question?
Yeah.
Go
Can I
for it.
recommend that you ask something more like, have you had any previous water damage? Because that can
Mm-hmm.
indicate a mold issue. And then also, um, are there any damp, musty odors in the home?
Yeah.
Because if you have that smell, it can also be an indicator. And
Mm.
then another follow-on question to that is, do your friends and family notice the smell when they come to your home? Because people get used to the smell of their own home and then don't notice it. So, sometimes the small changes you don't really notice over time because they're so minute. So, yeah, they're really good questions because yes, mold can be invisible, and I see that a lot. For example, I had one client back in January who had water damage, and they just wanted to make sure the house was safe for they had a little child, and they just wanted to make sure it was okay. And they had no visible mold. Like I said, they just had a leak which was coming from a window, and they'd done some renovations and just wanted to make sure it was okay. And from my visual inspection, I didn't see much that was an indicator that there was mold. Um, they had a small water stain on the carpet, which, sometimes can not lead to serious mold growth, but sometimes it can. And I did the air sampling testing from this place, and it came back with extreme levels. I think from memory, it was about 80,000 spores per meters cubed, when our guidelines say for a healthy living environment, the number of mold spores per meter cubed should be under 500.
Oh,
So we couldn't
wow.
see this mold. Yeah, this is how bad invisible mold can be.
So
So,
where was it?
so it was in the carpet,
Yeah.
and it was also coming from under the subfloor, which is a very common issue I see in Tassie. So we have subfloor spaces or crawl spaces, which some people on the mainland probably won't know what that is, which is somewhere between 30 centimeters to a meter in height of a space underneath the floor, between the floor and the soil. And I see quite often a lot of moisture ingress happening in that space. And as soon as there's moisture sitting in there in a high enough level, we're going to get mold growing. And then with the natural airflows of the building, especially if you've got floorboards or particle board floorings with carpet on top, that moisture and the mold spores are going to make their way up into the living space.
Mm-hmm.
So that is a huge source of invisible mold, especially in Tassie. So yeah, we've got the subfloor spaces, we've got walls, we've got the building materials. Sometimes furniture can be contaminated, especially if someone's moved from a previously water damaged building and brought their furniture with them. So things like couches and mattresses are quite notorious for having high mold levels. What else
You
have we
just
got? We've got
smiled like for mattresses, like is that like a big thing?
Uh, yeah, mattresses I find are a big source of health issues. So, first of all, we've got mold, which can be exacerbated because, every night we're lying in there for at least 8 hours. We're getting high humidity levels because, we naturally perspire when we're sleeping.
I
We
dribble
sweat.
so much when I sleep. I probably need to change my pillow every week, I reckon. Now I'm getting buy a new pillow every week.
Like a whole
Well, yeah,
pillow.
all jokes aside, it's true.
A
It's
whole new
true that
pillow.
dribbles can contribute, probably less so than sweating in your mattress, but it can be a thing. And with that increased humidity in our beds, that can lead to mold growth, but it can also lead to dust mites. And I see quite a few, especially smaller children, who experience, the morning sneezes and fatigue, which goes away in the afternoon. Quite often that can be dust mites, and mattresses are a big source of that. So that's quite interesting and something for everyone to look out for.
Mm. I remember
Yeah.
I had a client, she had a lot of allergy type markers, symptoms showing. So yeah, sneezing, itchy, kind of like very histamine type symptoms. And even before she met with us for the very first time, she just had a feeling that maybe she needed to put all her plants outside. And she had like her whole house was a forest. And when she put all the plants outside, her symptoms probably got like 50% better. So mold in plants as well.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Soil.
Mold can be in the soil of plants. I guess there's so many things that can trigger allergies in plants, like the
Mm,
pollens from flowers, and the things in the soil as well. So fertilizers contain a high level of mold, and microbes, because that's by design, they're
mm,
designed to break down and compost things. So yeah, plants are often a source, especially when people overwater them or use old potting mix, for example, that just has an overgrowth of certain kinds of molds, and bacteria in them. And some people might see like a white fluff on top of the soil of their plants. Yeah, that's probably from old potting mix, or overwatering. So that can be an issue. In terms of mold illness, I haven't seen it a very high number of times. It's quite rare.
mm,
But with allergy markers, I can see that, yeah,
mm,
potentially it could be mold, it could be the pollen.
mm.
Wow.
What
Yeah,
about
it'd be
things
interesting to
like,
see what markers were found.
yeah. What about
Mm.
things like air cons, heat pumps, even like car when you put the fan on and it's like blowing in your face? Can that be a hidden source as well?
Yes, air conditioners, cars, heat pumps, they can be sources of mold. And one of the big reasons that they do harbor a lot of mold growth is because some of the systems actually work through condensation. So a lot of air conditioning units will pull the heat out of the air through condensation. And so you can imagine you've got moisture building up in the back of the device and in the pipes. And then when you turn them on, all of that mold and the mold spores becomes airborne and then comes into our breathing space, which is not ideal. So I do recommend a heat pump clean with a full flush, every year or at the change of every season. So quite often people will say, oh yeah, I clean my heat pump. I get the vacuum and I clean the little flap at the top that you lift up and they vacuum that. But I need people to dig a little bit deeper, grab your torches and put the light up inside the barrel fan. So the area that the air comes out of the device, and have a look what's there. We want that to be white. If it's got any dots, any dust in it, it's due for a clean.
Yeah.
So there's the heat pumps and the reverse cycles or the split system for the people that are not in Tasmania. They'll be like, what is a heat pump? Um, and then we have other forms of heating and ventilation, like central, HRV systems, for example, like heat recovery ventilation systems, and other forms of full building ventilation, which I often see also with high levels of mold, especially when the pipes aren't insulated properly, because again, we're going to get condensation happening. So if you pull the warm air up from a living space and then you put it into the ceiling where the pipe work is most often, and then the ceiling cavity is cold, and the ductwork has, you know, a metal surface, we see condensation happening in there. So you can imagine with the dust as the food source of the mold and the moisture encouraging it, we're going to get mold growth in those systems as well.
Mm. I'm like, I don't know if I
Not
want to put the torch up next to our aircon.
You won't be able to reach. That's a Chris job.
Okay, what about treating mold? So does someone have to like completely pull up carpet and walls and renovate it, or is there things that people can do either like for the occupant to surface level clean it, or that just doesn't do the job?
So my answer to this is it depends. How you clean mold really depends on the extent of the damage, of the water damage, and the extent of the mold growth, and also what material it's on. So part of my job as a mold testing technician is to determine the condition of a space. So it's condition 1, 2, and 3, which, without going too much into the nitty gritty, it basically rates a space on, you know, whether it's a normal fungal ecology, because mold is everywhere. So we expect to see some mold at a safe level. That would be condition 1, right down to condition 3, where you've got active fungal growth with, you know, maybe long-standing moisture and water damage. And that's the worst, essentially. So if you have a condition 2, which is inactive mold growth, maybe the mold has come from an adjacent room and settled in the next room, the cleaning procedure is different. So, but for your listeners who maybe have like mold on the bathroom wall, for example, or in the shower, that's a common one. So in the shower recess, perhaps on the tiles or the grout. I hear a lot of people using treatments like mold treatment or bleach or vinegar or clove oil as well. My recommendation is to not use any of those, surprisingly.
Wow.
And the reason for that is because a lot of these solutions that kill the mold, yes, it may stop the mold growing, so you won't get any more mold in the short term. The issue is the mold spores, which are what actually contain the mycotoxins, which is what make you sick. They still exist. So when they become airborne, you'll still be breathing them in, and you'll, you know, be exposing yourself to those with the risk of getting sick. So there's the potential, the health risk is still there. But the other reason is you've temporarily killed it, but as soon as moisture is reintroduced, so the next time you have a shower, those mold spores are still going to be there and they remain intact. So when the moisture is reintroduced, they start growing again.
Yeah. So how do you?
Sorry?
Oh, so what would you recommend to clean it with then?
Yeah, so my cleaning recommendations are always on removal. So there are ways you can remove it, starting with the less extreme, sticking with the bathroom example. Hey, I recommend get rid of all the grime on other surfaces, like say you know, some furniture, on surfaces like on top of tables and things. You can use microfiber cloths, and they are amazing at picking up the mold spores, instead of just using a cotton cloth, for example, which will simply push the dust aside. So the dust and the mold will still be in your home. The microfiber cloth will actually pick that up and remove it, because the end goal is removal. So using a damp microfiber cloth can be a really great way of cleaning the surfaces that don't have serious water damage issues. So then the next level is when a material has, you know, water damage. So for example, a wall that's been getting condensation for years and years and years, and the mold keeps coming back. How we clean that is quite different, and I would recommend a professional to clean that. First of all, because you're going to be exposing yourself to a high level of mold. If it's in your wall, it's going to be a lot, and you don't want to be making that airborne without putting the right safety procedures in place, potentially a containment or using the right devices. So yeah, it can be quite involved, and the next level again is removing the materials. So you'll see a lot of homes that have had flood damage, for example. You'll see they've got like the plasterboard cut out, halfway up the wall. That's because the level of contamination is so high that you can't actually clean the material. And this is where testing is extremely important, so we can work out the level of contamination and what needs to come out and the appropriate cleaning method. So yeah, it's not an easy answer, but basically I don't recommend trying to kill the mold with any solutions. Removal is the key, always.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool. I love that. You have been
Holy
so
smokes.
generous with like so many insights, myth busting, as well as some really cool practical tips. So we're so grateful for you coming on our show. Chris has got a lot of notes.
Yeah, lots of.
He's going to start doing some like really good prevention cleaning, aren't you?
Am I?
Yeah.
I think, yeah.
Much information.
Yeah, my big question, Bronwyn, is how can people who are listening get in touch with you, and how can you help?
And you've also got a really cool checklist,
Oh, cool.
A mold prevention checklist that
I do have a
think
mold
everyone
prevention.
should download. So
yeah. So if you go to mould-testing.net, which is my website, you can find a list of my services on there, and I offer in-person consultations. The best way to approach this is have me come to your home to investigate it thoroughly, because just like healing body burnout, it is complicated and it is so much more than just looking at the mold on the wall. So having me come to your home, we can do that. If you are elsewhere in Australia, I can do an online consult. And for anyone who may just be interested in, preventing mold growth in their home, I do have a checklist, as Philly said. So head over to mould-testing.net/checklist and you can get that one there. So I've put together a list of things that you can easily implement yourself to help prevent, getting sick from mold.
So good.
Oh, beautiful. So good. Thanks, Bronwyn, for coming on to the show. I've got so much information.
Pleasure. Thank you much for having me.
Legend. Thanks, everybody, for joining us for this episode. We look forward to having you on the next one.
Thank you so much for listening. We so appreciate you. If you'd like to give us extra smiles, drop us a review and spread the love by sharing this episode.
You can also rate your own state of burnout and the root cause contributors by taking our Ending Body Burnout Assessment on our website. And if you're interested in learning about our group or one-on-one Ending Body Burnout programs, shoot us a DM via Instagram or Facebook.
Have the best day ever.